Hey there, thank you for coming back to my channel, and if this is your first time, welcome. Today we're going to be doing a quick review and comparison as well as swatching a couple of the new eyeshadow palettes that are being released for the spring-summer season. We'll be taking a look at the Espoir lookbook, the Bbia Love Series Final Shadow Palette 3, as well as comparing those to the Espoir Mauve Me and Apricot Me palettes. Let's first take a look at the Roko High Teen palette, which is the Spring-Summer 2021 limited edition lookbook from Espoir. Espoir has been bringing out these limited edition lookbook twice a year, and this time the Roko High Teen palette is a bright but soft pink palette with some neutral brown. There are 6 different eyeshadow shades, 2 matte base with pearls of different colors, and 2 pressed glitters of different texture, as well as 1 blush shade. These shades in this palette have been chosen well so that even though the theme color is pink, it is not too over the top. I also like the fact that the matte as well as matte base with pearl shades are very finely milled and also more pigmented than the shades in the Real Eye palette. Between the 2 pressed glitter shades in the Roko High Teen palette, one has a slightly bigger size of particles, but both of them contain particles of multiple different colors, and I think they are very shiny but still complement the rest of the colors quite well. One question that popped into my head right away when I saw images of the Roko High Teen palette was if it's going to be too similar to the Vintage Lace palette, which is the Fall Winter 2020 lookbook from Espoir. However, if you put these 2 palettes side by side, you should be able to see that the shades in the Vintage Lace palette are a lot more muted and toned down, while the shades in the Roko High Teen palette are much brighter and more vivid and have been appropriately chosen for a spring-summer color palette. This is in addition to the fact that shades in the Vintage Lace palette are slightly warmer than the shades in the Roko High Teen palette. However, I still prefer the blush shade in the Vintage Lace palette as it is a more wearable coral pink color compared to the milky and white base pink color in the Roko High Teen palette. Moving on, we have the 2 palettes in the Bbia Love series. The Blind Love palette is the muted cool tone, slightly pinky palette, and the Honey Love palette is the bright and slightly warmer peachy palette. I do appreciate softly pigmented eyeshadows from time to time, but these 2 eyeshadow palettes are quite disappointing to me, as even though there are 8 different shades in the 2 palettes, 5 out of the 8 shades are very chalky and light, so I had a very difficult time swatching them and making them show up on my skin, even though my skin is only a 21 or 22 in Korean cushion foundation. Furthermore, the texture in these 2 palettes are not the same soft texture that I experienced in the Final Shadow palette season 1 and 2. These eyeshadows in the Love series are very dry and very clumpy, so they don't apply very well. Let's do some comparison. Between the Roko High Teen and the Blind Love palettes, the Roko High Teen palette is more neutral and also more pinkish, whereas the Blind Love palette is overall milkier, and there's also a little bit of a hint of gray across all the shades. Between Mauve Me and Blind Love though, I would still prefer the Mauve Me palette as the shades are less milky and the pigmentation is way better. There's also more of a hint of purple in the Mauve Me palette that I think the Blind Love palette lacks. On the other hand, the difference between the Vintage Lace palette, the Honey Love palette, as well as the Espoir Apricot Me palette is really the brightness. The color story across these 3 palettes are very similar, but if the Vintage Lace palette contains shades that are the most muted and toned down, the Honey Love palette contains shades that are bright but also the milkiest out of the 3 palettes. Even though the Espoir lookbook are about twice as expensive as the Bbia Final Shadow Palette 3, I would say go for the Espoir lookbook and save your money on the Bbia Final Shadow Palette 3. The Espoir lookbook just wins in every category for me. The packaging is better, the quality of all the shades in each palette are higher, and there are no throwaway shades in either of these lookbooks. The Bbia palettes are very light for my skin tone, so I'll have to throw away about half of the shades in each of the Love series palette, not to mention that all of the shades are very dry and very difficult to work with. And there you have it guys, I hope that you have found this video useful. I definitely recommend that you check out and maybe get the Espoir lookbook while you still can. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.